My husband and children cut ties with me after discovering my affair. Honestly, what other reaction could I have expected? Let's dive into this story, which dates back to May 4th, 2021. The woman begins her account by asking readers not to judge until hearing her full side. She admits her actions were wrong and entirely her responsibility. She's not shifting blame, but is seeking clarity on whether her 19-year marriage can be saved, or if it's beyond repair. She introduces herself as Francine, 38, and her husband is Rai, 44. They married young, just a month after the birth of their daughter Libby, who is now 19. About a year later, they welcomed their son Craig, who also attends college with his sister, 5 hours away from home. Despite marrying young and struggling financially, Rai and Francine built a stable life. Rai has always been a dedicated provider, husband and father. Francine now works 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. They own a home, have healthy savings, and until recently, describe themselves as a solid, close-knit family. That was until Francine admits she allowed herself to be influenced by someone she calls a dark person. She frames this new figure in her life as deceptive. It began casually. Francine explains they have a family dog, and on her days off, she takes the dog to the park. When she works, Rai comes home during lunch to walk the dog, and on weekends they walk together. One Tuesday, about 3 months prior, Francine met a man at the park, Leonard, 37. Their dogs became playmates, and conversation followed. Leonard claimed to have seen her at the park before, though she hadn't noticed him. Soon they began coincidentally running into each other during her visits. Whether it was truly chance or intentional is unclear, but their conversations grew. At first it seemed harmless. Francine even mentioned Leonard to her husband at dinner one night, joking about how their dogs had become best friends. Rai laughed it off. But things soon shifted. 2 months ago, Leonard revealed he lived in a luxury apartment near the park, only half a mile from Francine's home. Curious, she asked about them, since a friend of hers had been considering renting there. Leonard offered to show her his apartment so she could take photos. Instead of declining, she agreed. Once inside, she realized she had crossed a line. Though she stayed only 10 minutes, she chose not to tell Rai about her visit. That night, she overcompensated, cooking dinner, showering him with affection and initiating intimacy. This sudden burst of attention, as many would point out, is often a red flag. It can be an attempt to mask guilt. The following week, Leonard and Francine spent nearly 2 hours talking at the park. She admitted their connection had gone too far. But when Leonard insisted their chemistry was undeniable, she agreed. Soon after, she visited his apartment again, and this time, they became physically involved. Francine confesses she felt little guilt afterward. Instead, she redirected her energy into her marriage, giving Rai more affection than usual. Again, this sudden behavior can be a warning sign. From there, she and Leonard began meeting every Tuesday and Thursday for nearly 2 months, about 15 to 17 times in total. She notes that during this period, she was too absorbed in the affair to notice her husband's behavior changing. Rai became distant, gave short responses, and rejected intimacy. He started working late, claiming he was tied up with a major project at the office. While unusual, Francine accepted his explanation and believed things would return to normal once the project ended. Rai even promised they would reconnect afterward. But instead of reconciliation, Francine returned home one Friday to find a large envelope taped to the door. Inside were pages of messages between her and Leonard from their fake social media accounts. This reveals how calculated the affair had been. Affairs often involve planning, creating secret accounts, setting up meeting times, and are rarely just mistakes. Overwhelmed, Francine searched the house and then discovered a white gift box with a red bow left on their bed. Inside were divorce papers. That's when she realized Rai had uncovered everything and was ending the marriage. She tried calling him repeatedly, but he didn't respond. When she reached out to their children, they too ignored her. Eventually, Rai texted, saying he knew everything, as did their kids, his family, and now even her parents. He informed her that he had already moved out, signed a lease, and that she would soon hear from his attorney. His last words, "Enjoy your new life with Leonard." It became clear that during the weeks Rai appeared distant, he had been preparing his exit, meeting lawyers, arranging housing, and gathering evidence. Devastated, Francine broke down. When she finally heard from her mother, it wasn't comfort she received, it was anger. Her father expressed deep disappointment, saying he never imagined his daughter capable of such behavior. Now isolated, she hesitated to reach out to friends. Fearing judgment, left alone, she decided to call Leonard for support. But his reaction was far from reassuring. Instead of concern, his first question was why she was using her real phone rather than their fake accounts. When she explained her husband had discovered everything, Leonard's only focus was on whether she had signed out of their accounts. Leonard then asked if my husband knew who he was. I told him yes, since Rai had mentioned his name in the message he sent me. Leonard's response was silence, followed by him shouting profanity repeatedly, so loudly that his dog began barking. After a moment he said, "I'm sorry this happened, but you were careless. Let's delete everything, our accounts, our numbers, and cut off contact. Maybe you can fix your marriage. Don't reach out to me again." I was shocked and disgusted by how quickly he turned cold. There was no apology for contributing to the breakdown of my marriage, no concern for what I was going through, only self-preservation. How could I have been so foolish to betray Rai, and worse, to do so with someone like Leonard? I'm writing this at 3 a.m. Tuesday morning, unable to sleep. I've taken the week off work, in hopes of speaking with my husband and children, so I can apologize and try to repair the damage. I feel broken and isolated. Everything I valued is gone, except my dog, because of my actions. Has anyone else who strayed been cut off so completely? Rai has moved out, filed for divorce, and refuses any contact. I know I caused this, but ending our marriage over what I keep telling myself was one mistake feels extreme. I need guidance. Francine. Now notice two things here. She minimizes her actions by calling them one mistake, and she shifts blame onto Leonard by labeling him shallow and cowardly. What she does not do is take full responsibility. Let's look at some of the community responses. But before we continue, if you're finding value in this discussion, consider pressing the like button. It helps share this story with a wider audience. The first response is from a woman. Francine, don't be too hard on yourself. What you did was instinctive. I'm not saying it's right, but it's natural. I've been dealing with my own infidelity, and my husband has been more understanding than Rai. He stood by me through everything. I've been in counseling, and we also attend marriage therapy twice a week. It's been hard, but my husband is my anchor. Stay strong. The next response, from a man says, your husband just left and won't even talk to you? Was your marriage already struggling before this? Have you cheated before? If you were my wife, I at least want to hear your side before making a final decision. I think there sips more to your story than you sharing. That's an interesting point. When I first read this, I too wondered whether we were getting the whole truth. It would be useful to hear Rai's perspective, to understand what their marriage was like before the affair. Another reply, this time from a woman, reads, so sad, Francine. Don set wear your infidelity, like a scarlet letter, you stir only human. I cheated on my husband in 1995. We separated for 6 months, but he came back and we had a happy life until his passing last year. I regret what I did, but I made it up to him. That's her account. But I'd question whether her husband truly felt as content as she describes. Forgiveness doesn't always erase the pain. And finally, one man responded, women like you don't realize the damage you cause. The pain you've given your husband will stay with him for years. My first wife cheated after 5 years of marriage and 2 kids. I divorced her immediately, moved forward, and years later remarried a wonderful woman. Meanwhile, her life is a disaster. I wish your husband well. Now, Francine later returned with updates. Let's go through them. Her first update, 3 days later, reads, I'm back, because I need an outlet. I just spoke with my kids as they drove home. After days of ignoring me, I thought they finally wanted to talk and let me apologize. Instead, I was met with insults and words I'd never imagined my children would use. Libby was especially cruel, and I think Craig followed her lead. I told them I was sorry, admitted it was fully my fault, and reminded them of the good mother and wife I had been before this. My daughter told me I used to be great, but now I'm terrible. The worst. She ended the call by saying they'd be staying with their father this weekend, and I shouldn't expect to see them. That crushed me. Especially since Sunday is Mother's Day. I'll be alone with only my dog. I hope this anger is temporary. Thank you to those offering encouragement. It helps me cope. Then, 3 weeks later, she posted again. I've been in individual counseling for 2 weeks, and it's helping. My counselor told me I've done everything possible to mend my family ties. She said the best thing now is to step back and wait. If they come back, it proves they love me. If not, then they never did. She also recommended transcendental meditation, which I've started. It gives me peace and clarity. For now, I'll wait and hope my husband and kids return so we can be a family again. And finally, 4 months later, another update. Well, it's been some time, but I have big news, both good and bad. A couple of weeks after my last update, I found out I was pregnant, at 38, after more than 15 years of trying for a third child. This was shocking. My emotions were mixed, joy at the possibility, but fear it could be Leonard's. I panicked. The first person I wanted to tell was Rye, but if the baby wasn't his, I knew I'd lose him forever. Ending the pregnancy wasn't an option either, because Rye is firmly against it. I contacted a DNA clinic to see if prenatal testing was possible without the father's saliva. They said it was, but only with other samples like hair follicles. I found a few in Rye's brush, but not enough. As a backup, I considered contacting Leonard, but he had blocked me and deleted his account. So I went to his workplace. When I approached him, he looked annoyed and said he didn't want to talk anymore. I told him I was pregnant and that he could be the father. His response, "Oh no, you're not going to trap me. I know this game." Leonard showed his true colors here. I told him to listen carefully. If he didn't cooperate, I would go directly to his HR department and report what he was doing while on company time. I demanded he arrange and pay for a paternity test, giving him the clinic's information. I told him he had 48 hours to comply, or I would escalate. That same evening, Leonard unblocked my number and texted that he had made an appointment for the following Tuesday at 10 a.m. Since he knew I had Tuesdays off, I agreed. We both arrived at the clinic without speaking. Leonard went in first and provided his saliva sample. Then I followed for a blood draw. A week later, the results arrived, and they confirmed Leonard was not the father. I dropped to my knees in relief and thanked God for blessing us with the child we had wanted for so many years. I longed to tell Rye, but he still had me blocked, and I didn't know where he was living. My children were also avoiding me. I texted both Libby and Craig, saying I had important news and asked for a 3-way call. Libby pressed me for details, but I told her I would explain on the call. When we finally connected, I shared the pregnancy news. Instead of joy, they became angry. They assumed immediately the baby belonged to Leonard. I assured them it was their father's, explaining that the conception date aligned with that timeline. I didn't mention the DNA test with Leonard, choosing instead to keep it simple. My daughter then accused me of trapping their father by deliberately getting pregnant. I denied this, reminding them their father and I had tried for years to conceive. Eventually, They agreed to speak with Rai and ask him to contact me. I waited anxiously, but the call never came. The following afternoon, I received a voicemail from Rai's attorney. When I returned the call, she explained she was aware of my pregnancy and that I was claiming Rai was the father. I broke down, pleading to speak directly with him. The attorney was professional but firm. She explained that Rai wanted a paternity test for confirmation. I immediately agreed and even offered to pay for it myself. She arranged for me to schedule the appointment, with Rai providing his sample at a separate time. I cried through the night, devastated that Rai doubted me over something so meaningful. But the truth is, after 2 months of deceit, his suspicion was understandable. The test was completed, and earlier this morning, I received the results. Rai is indeed the father. While I already knew this, having official confirmation lifted a huge weight off my shoulders. I'm determined to move forward, rebuild trust, and repair the relationships I damaged. Thank you to everyone who encouraged me during this difficult time. Francine. At this point, Francine felt relieved and even optimistic, believing that carrying Rai's child would reconnect them. But here's what happened next. Her final update came on May 18, 2022. 8 months later, she shared, "We're still a work in progress, but each day feels closer to the family we once were before I destroyed everything through selfish choices." First, Rai and I did divorce. Despite my pleas, and despite DNA confirming the baby was his, he proceeded. I held on to hope, expecting that once the results came back, he'd comfort me and reassure me. Instead, the only meeting we had was in his attorney's office, on video. There, he told me the divorce was final and that he wanted to shift toward a healthy co-parenting arrangement. I broke down, but we continued the discussion. We agreed to split custody equally, 50-50ths. I received 1 year of alimony and ongoing child support. Ri also agreed to cover half the costs of taxes, insurance, and utilities on the family home for 2 years, so the baby would remain in a safe and stable environment. In late January, Francine gave birth to their son. She described him as a miracle, both because he arrived after 15 years of trying, and because he seemed to bring the family back together. Libby and Craig became loving siblings, visiting every weekend from college. Libby was even present in the delivery room. Francine explained that since the birth, Rai had been at her house every night. He came straight from work, stayed until the baby was down for the night, and recently even brought dinner for the two of them. She viewed this as progress, though it raised concerns. Was she slowly pulling him back into the relationship? She wrote, "Rai and I are friendly, and we haven't spoken about the affair or divorce. I haven't pressured him about reconciliation. My counselor advised giving him space, and I followed that advice. With every day, I feel like I'm getting a little more of my husband back. I've also worked hard to rebuild trust with Libby and Craig. If I do regain Rai as a partner, I will never do anything to risk it again. He and my children mean everything to me." Francine closed by saying, she knows life won't return to what it once was, but she's grateful for what she has now. She promised only to return with another update if she and Rai officially reunite. So what can we take from this story? Several important lessons stand out. Sudden, intense affection, often called love bombing, can be a red flag, signaling someone is hiding guilt or trying to cover up mistakes. Many who cheat minimize their actions, shifting blame onto their affair partner. But the truth is, responsibility always lies with the married person. Betrayal changes not only the relationship with a spouse, but also with family and friends. Once trust is broken, others may always view you differently. Finally, sometimes divorce is the healthier option. 2 stable homes are better for children than 1 broken and resentful household. Now, I'd like to hear from you. What do you think of this story? Did Rai handle the situation well? Do you believe Francine is slowly pulling him back into her life? And could they reconcile? Share your thoughts in the comments below.